Good morning. I come to you with a little message that has been tickling my mind and my soul for a very long time, but it seems like now is the right time to put it into word. And that is a message that involves these more imaginative or what we in today, especially if you live in the United States, might relate to as like a fantasy world or the idealized world, right? How humans interact with one another and how we interact with the material of our earth. So this tends to be like pushed into a narrative or the frame of spirituality, or like this tends to like be related to a lot of Neptunian like influences or energies. So that could be like transcendentalism, anything that takes you out, like anything related to like the spirit or spirituality, which is why oftentimes also it's looked at as like delusional, you know? It's just because we're seeing the whole ocean as opposed to just staying along the shore, right? So I wanted to pull a couple cards for us today and kind of speak to something that's been coming up for me and something that I know that I can translate, which is this sense that what I'm doing with my body is not necessarily right. And I don't really know how to explain it too directly, again, because I'm so familiar with this Neptunian energy of like, there's a form here, but as soon as you try to point at the form or hold it in place, it just dissolves. You know, it continues to be, it continues to move. It's like vapor. And so I pulled a couple of our astrology cards to kind of get the ball rolling. We have the third house, we have water. Now immediately just with these two, these are the last two cards that I pulled, and when I say the third house, to me, it's going to be about like how energies are communicating with one another. There's going to be an exchange of information. There's going to be a passing on of information, a translation, right? Learning. That's how we get to learning. So the third house in water here, it's maybe like a communication of the heart. It might be communicating emotions or communicating things that aren't so rigid or so sharp. They're going to be a little bit more fluid. And so that can tend to be the language of the arts or the language of intimacy, right? So third house, we have water, and then we also have Neptune. Again, following this theme, Neptune was the first card to come out. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, yes, okay, I can talk about this because I know Neptune. I think I know Neptune, right? Do we ever really know Neptune? That's kind of the whole point, right? And then next to Neptune, we had Venus, which a lot of people say that Neptune is a higher octave of Venus, whatever that means. But all of these cards together, to me, I see binding, I see expansion, and like it almost like molecular binding. If you've never seen what it looks like for a white blood cell to transport itself around your body, find a video, because this is what this energy is giving me the feeling of. Basically what happens is, if you can picture a little amoeba looking splotch, the white blood cell will almost invert itself or push its plasma outward, break its plasma outward, like pull it out and kind of like paddle, or like if you're looking at it on a 2D surface, it looks like it's just crawling and like spreading out. Also, fun fact, white blood cells move like 1,000 times faster than other cells in your body. So that's fun. But back to the energies here, Neptune and Venus also speak to a type of deep, deep, deep love and longing and desire, because these energies connect us to something so much larger than us, something that feels so much larger and so much further away from us. So for me, for example, I relate this a lot to my love, my deep love, this love that I can't even put into words for the expansion and the depth of space, right? It's something that's so much larger than me, and just that stimulates so much awe in my body. But it's also something that I don't really talk about, something that is not so present in my day-to-day, and that also speaks to Neptune. It's kind of what stays hidden, right? And I think because of the way that humans have organized themselves, it makes sense that, you know, a lot of the things that we cherish the most stay hidden. It's the energy of the sacred. It's the energy of the divine. So we have these two planets coming to our view. We have a grounding element of water, which, as many of us know, you probably know what it feels like to ground in water. It's very different than grounding yourself in the element of fire, obviously. And we have the third house, and the back of the card that kind of also grounds this conversation, is the sextile card. A combination of tension and flow, potential, and a rewarding situation. So again, the sextile card, being a 60-degree angle, it offers a little bit of conversation. Like the card said, there's a little bit of tension. It's like, okay, you have these two or more planetary energies kind of looking at each other and looking at, if it was more than three, it'd be like, okay, who's going to say what first? Or they're having a conversation. Because I myself think in images, I'm going to give you the image of two very long-armed, bulbous creatures, and they're sitting in a pool in some type of vapor, or there's in a room where there's really no form. There is barely any light, right? You have to rely on these subtle senses. Two very long-armed creatures standing across from one another, and they're kind of just like brushing one another's hands. They're not holding hands, but they're just kind of like brushing one another's hands. They're learning from one another. They want to sense one another, right? And again, there's not any vivid or clear form. They have to depend on their intuitive and internal senses. So for you, taking this into your own body and embodying this dynamic, you are the one who decides what the conversation is about. You decide, well, what is this energy that's longing for? Or how is this being translated into my own longing? I think Venus and Neptune together really create a really interesting dynamic, because as we said, Neptune will take you out of this world. Neptune will take you out of this atmosphere. It will pull you into a completely different shape and embodiment so that you can experience the sacred. It's transcendentalism. It is the higher-minded thinking that goes so far beyond philosophy, but it's what philosophy aims at, right? This preparation for death, essentially. This preparation for going beyond what you already know. Venus, on the other hand, likes to stay close to the body. Venus wants to pull things to the body that can be anything that deals with the major five senses. Venus ruling over Taurus is that personification, essentially wanting the comfort of whatever materials will harmonize best with its body. Venus ruling over Libra as well will pull in people and experiences that Libra can replicate, emulate, or kind of stand in the middle of to learn more about how it itself as that individual is in relation to the others around it. But Venus has this energy also of like coordination and like placement. So that's why the Venus-ruled signs tend to have a pretty good eye for design or a pretty good eye for aesthetics, because Venus is, again, that energy of pulling in material or pulling in an object, pulling in form, pulling in structure, and placing things in a certain way that is pleasing to the eye, that is beautiful, essentially. So these two energies will give us very intense awareness of beauty, of longing, desire, and of God, really, the unknown. Neptune can also be a pretty scary energy to be dealing with just because of our assumption of the unknown, our assumption that we are engaging with the unknown. So that's just a little side note. But so I guess we're kind of just being guided to tune into that space, or to understand why we've been hesitant to tune into that space. Is it possible to ground ourselves here? What would that look like, right? Does that make sense? And Neptune isn't the planet that's going to ask you if that makes sense or not. So maybe this isn't the time to be asking, does that really make sense? And instead, this is that time to just be following that desire, following that longing, right? With as much pure awareness as you can, because we don't want to just follow some delusion that can get us caught up in something that really does not serve us on any fundamental level. Okay, so now that we have our foundations, I want to go ahead and see how else this energy is moving and being translated. So 2 cards that I saw and that have shown themselves again before was the sextile card, as we know, which is that combination of tension and flow with potential and a rewarding situation. And Leo, actually, Leo being ruled by the sun, Leo offering that self-confidence, loyalty, and creativity, and being the place of ourselves, the temple wherein we find our most confident and creative and loving self, I guess. And I'm listening to myself talk about Leo, and this is just not the energy that Leo would be accepting. Leo wants you to feel radiant and bright and powerful, just confident in yourself. It doesn't always mean that you have to be extroverted or have an extroverted, boasty type confidence about yourself, but it just means that you trust in yourself, that you acknowledge that you have a light. It doesn't matter how you project that onto other people necessarily, or that you do, but just that you acknowledge your light, acknowledge your radiance. And this is something that I personally have struggled with a lot. And Neptune influenced people also struggle with a lot, is just not really either. There's always this air of like confusion around Neptunian things, whether that's like distrust of oneself, delusion, not really having a good picture of yourself, not really having a good picture of other people. Neptune and Venus could kind of like blur the waters, blur the lines, right? These are some of the more like depressive aspects of Neptune. Neptune can also be very depressive, Neptune moon energies. So Leo kind of, to me, enters as like this, hey, like, but like realize, right? Like realize this. It wants to shine that light onto whatever Neptune is clouding up and kind of say like, hey, realize this. And you know what? Sometimes you can, when the light breaks through the mist, or like when light breaks over water, it sparkles, right? And so maybe this is just the way that you sparkle. And who knows? Like, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? What does that feel like to you? So with Leo, though, we also have this energy of the 7th house, which is our house of profound relationships, intimacy, and romantic partnerships. Now, Leo, again, is very self-focused. It's going to be anything that Leo touches or that comes through the sun or comes through Leo, it is very, very independently focused, very I-focused, right? Leo is the I am. It is the capacity to acknowledge oneself. And so when we have that mixing here with the 7th house, part of me feels like, okay, well, what is this saying? How much energy have we put onto others? How much energy are we putting onto ourselves, right? That might be one thing. How much energy have we surrendered to others? How much energy have we given back to ourselves? Can you distinguish yourself amongst a crowd? Do you know yourself enough not to get wrapped up and absorbed, Neptune and Venus, absorbed by other people, what other people like, what other people do? I'm seeing now how this can relate to my previous episode that I just posted, Body and Ego. Who is that self, that core? Where do you channel your energy from? Right? Is it from source? Is it from nature? What source? You know, and whose image are you replicating? Whose image are you living up to? And it can be blurry because Neptune wants to acknowledge everybody and everything. Neptune, where you might see like a couple suns splattered across or a couple stars splattered across our galaxy, Neptune is, okay, well then I am the galaxy. Or, you know, we are not these individual suns, we are the galaxy. And so Neptune has this propensity to kind of lose itself, or allow you to lose yourself in other people or in other things, right? Because Neptune is this high sense of empathy, and so it can absorb and adapt itself around whatever has its attention, whatever is taking the most of its attention. And so it's very easy for Neptune and Venus here and the Leo involved to kind of want to become the nature of what it is that they're perceiving, the nature of what it is that they see. And think of for yourself, how does this resonate for me? Where do I see this in my own life, right? Do you have this propensity to kind of like want to emulate something, absorb something into yourself so much so that you start performing as that person? Keyword or trigger word for Leo here, performing, right? So with the 3rd house and the 7th house here, these are areas of our life where we find ourselves having conversations. 3rd and 7th also, mind you, are air houses, so they're trine. So they do well in partnership with one another. The other trine is the 11th house. So this is where we really are talking about partnership. We're talking about cooperation more than anything. And what's even more beautiful is that we have the energy of water also on the board. The trines I relate to water because of just their fluidity, their ease, right? They kind of just, that's an aspect that just pours into one another. Also, it reduces to the number 3, which I will relate to water. So I really like that, oh my God, is coming out. I love the fucking stuttering with the 3rd house out here. Anyway, but with these energies also, I feel like there's a lot of push to give yourself grace, to when you make mistakes or when you kind of fuck up a little or sputter up a little bit, to look at that with love, to give yourself a little bit of grace, to be able to laugh at yourself and kind of say, oh, yeah, that's okay. You're still loved. I still love you, right? That's okay. And again, it's all contextual because you could take that narrative and put it into a relationship dynamic where, you know, somebody might be doing something that you may not agree with or just something that kind of like rubs you wrong a little bit. But instead of responding with this, you know, vindictive judgment or whatever, we kind of ease into love. We ease into, hey, that's okay. It's okay. And, you know, of course, there are certain rules with that, I would hope, that should correspond with some morality. But I feel like this is my approach to, and has been becoming my approach to helping people who I potentially just maybe don't agree with on the very like cognitive fronts, right? Where we're making certain beliefs, have certain beliefs about different constructs in the world and whatnot, because this is a completely different frame. This is a completely different narrative. This is accepting people into love, because love does not have to be conditional to how it is that you navigate constructs in your mind, essentially, right? I think love wants to accept and allow the body to be. And that is so, 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 so beautiful and such a powerful thing. It's that sense of knowing that, like, you can fuck up and you're still going to be accepted and you're still going to be loved because you're here, you belong here, right? So I needed to hear that. I needed to feel that and experience this space again. So thank you to these cards for stirring up this conversation as well. And thank you for being here. I hope that in this flurry of words, you found something that kind of could stick to you, something that could relate to your own experience of yourself, of self-love, of the love for nature, the universe, for divinity, spirit, God, whatever we want to call it, for that unknown, right? For the unseen. And kind of learn to give yourself a little bit more grace as you navigate this dark world, to be the light in this dark world as well. So all of these beautiful little expressions that kind of just make living a little bit easier. But anyway, at the end of the day, it just matters that we're okay. So, I love you. Have a beautiful day.